हाँ प्रवीण जी, स्टार्ट
जी जी।
रीडिंग।
मैम एक्चुअली एक प्रॉब्लम मेरे साथ भी है आज। आप
क्या?
एक्चुअली आज रीडिंग मत करवाइए।
हाँ,
आप मतलब इसको एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए, मतलब आप भी रीड मत कीजिए। जो भी टॉपिक है उसको एक्सप्लेन कर दीजिए, विल अंडरस्टैंड, क्योंकि मैं अभी ड्राइविंग कर रहा हूँ।
अच्छा अच्छा। सी, what is production? Production is when you are converting input, whatever is the input. It can be man, it can be material, it can be capital. All these are the input which is required to transform it into something, a thing which the consumer wants, needs, desire, whatever you want to say. So it is converting into a finished product or services, which finally the consumer will be using it for his or her own benefit, and it is acceptable by the consumer. So planning and control, these are the two important factors of any production or operation management. So if you don't plan, then you will be wasting so much of time and energy and valuable resources. Because if you don't plan, you will not know what route you should do, how you should schedule your operation, everything. So planning, and then you have to see whether you are going according to the plan. If you are going according to the plan, then only things are under your control. Otherwise, it is not. So planning and control are the two important components of the management process. So as a manager, you have to see that things are going in a planned and in a controlled way. It is going to in the way it has been designed to go. And if something goes wrong, it is deviating, then some corrective measure has to be taken so that it is going according to the plan way. Production planning and control is a tool which coordinates all the manufacturing activities. Any any activity which is required to convert the raw material into finished goods or services, which will be finally used by the consumer. So all the activities have to be planned in a systematic way so that a useful service or product is produced, and also in a most cost effective manner. Minimum wastage has to be there. Once the plan is prepared, then the property operations are performed in the with details given in the plan. Production control comes into action when corrective action has to be. If it is deviating from the planned thing. Suppose you had planned to complete a particular activity, because any operation can be broken up into different activities. So if you had planned to complete it, say, in 10 hours, but it has taken 12 hours or more than 24 hours, then that means something has gone wrong. Something, though, you have to see what has gone wrong and how to make corrective measures that it goes according to the plan. Now, according to Charles A. Coepe, production planning and control is defined as the coordination of the series of functions according to a plan, which will economically, see, the emphasis is on economy, one most effective way of doing it. Economically utilize the plant facilities and regulate the orderly movement of goods during the entire manufacturing cycle, from the procurement of all material to the shipping of finished goods at a predetermined rate. So it is the whole supply chain, from the time you get the raw material till the time you supply it to the ultimate consumer. So all these things, what all activities are required, when should you get the material, what quality of material, at what time the material should come, where it should be stored, where it should be, when it should be taken, when it is needed. All these things should be planned beforehand. Otherwise, when the operation is actually going on, you won't have time to plan. You have to see that all these activities are going according to your plans. And if something goes beyond that, then naturally corrective action has to. The whole process. That is what Charles A. Cooper says. So it is a way of actually controlling, is a way of regulating as well as directing the movement of goods to whole of the production cycle, right from raw material to the final delivery of the product, so that the objective like maximum production, minimum inventory, as well as customer service are fully satisfied. So these three things: maximum production, inventory, as far you have inventory at all the level, at, at the raw material level, then at the semi-finished good level, then at the finished good level. So at every time you have to seek the minimum inventory. Otherwise, unnecessarily capital will be locked. If it is not required, what will happen? That will be a wastage, and this will add to the ultimate cost of the product. So you have to see the maximum production, whatever uh, things you are producing, whether it is goods or services, the maximum production has is been done. Minimum inventory is at each level, and as well as customer service are fully satisfied, and customer is satisfied. It is okay if you can finish the work, say, and if the customer is not satisfied, then the whole operation is useless. So you have to see these three things: maximum production, minimum inventory, and customer service. So this is the objective of any operations management. And this is, for this you have to do the production planning and as well as the control. So for what is the first objective of production planning? To determine the requirement of men, material and equipment. How much material you require, what type of material you require, what quality of material you require, what type of people you require, because without human resource, nothing can be achieved. So for that, they should have that particular skill for that particular operation. So that has to match. Then what type of equipments you require? As we have already done, there are so many different types of equipment. Some are for handling, some are for operation. So for all the different activities, you require different types of equipment. And the production of various inputs at a right time and the right quantity. This you have to be very careful. Production of various inputs at the right time and in the right quantity. If you don't get the inputs at the right time, naturally the whole process will be delayed. So at the right time and in the right quantity. Suppose if it is too much, that means you are getting more than what you will be using, and that will go waste. So this will again add to the cost. So everywhere the emphasis on effectiveness, minimum wastage, and making economical use of various inputs. Arranging, suppose you have the right material at the right time, but if you're not using it judiciously, you're wasting it, or some things are not being used, some are just left behind. So that will affect the both the cost and the quality of the product. Arranging production schedules according to the needs of marketing department. And then you should know when the marketing department needs them, when they will be dispatching it to the ultimate customer. So according to that, you have to plan your whole operation, and so that when they require it, it is available to them, so that it can be finally dispatched to the ultimate customer. Providing the for adequate stocks for meeting contingency. For all different types of contingency, you have to have adequate stock. Otherwise, again, the production or the operation of for that particular good or services will be affected. So these are the objective. When you are planning, you have to keep these things in mind. Keeping up-to-date information processes. Naturally, whatever is the best technology at that particular time, you have to keep that information technology so that you get the exact information at the right time, so that you can produce something which is desired by the consumer at the quality, quantity, as well as price which they are ready to pay. So this is a, what is production planning? It is planning, then routing, how it will be routed in during the operation, what will be the schedule of the various activities, then loading. Finally, once it is done, loading. These are the planning.
Ma'am, Mr.
Yes.
Gaurav has been joined to us, so now can change the slides.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Good
Okay.
evening.
Good evening, Gaurav. And production control is dispatching, follow up, inspection, and correction. So these are the two management part of any operations management. Production planning, where you plan the different activities, you plan its routing, you plan the scheduling, and finally loading the activity for the operation to actually take place. And controlling is when you're dispatching, you have to see it is dispatched in the right quantity, right quality, to the right destination. Then the follow up, whether it has gone there or not. Inspection also, when you see whatever material or the process which you are following is good. You, that is why we have that sampling method, because you cannot do 100% inspection. So some sampling method or some scientific method has to be used to do the proper inspection at each level. And then if something goes wrong, then take corrective action. So planning is plan your work. Plan your work, and control is work your plan. First you plan your work, how you are going to do it. And then when you are actually doing it, see it is going according to your plan. That is why it is written planning is plan your work and control is work your plan. Gaurav,
Yes,
Gaurav,
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
can you read it?
Yeah, yeah. But the slide is not visible, ma'am. Other slide. This is the
Slide.
title slide only.
Actually, ma'am, first slide is presented. Not move the another slide.
Okay, just 1 second. Now is it visible?
It is the sixth slide, ma'am. The sixth slide is
Yes,
visible
six.
now.
Huh. Six side.
Yeah.
Production planning and control is what? Planning is plan your work, how you are going to do the work. First you plan and then you control. Work your plan. Whether it is the work is going according to your plan. If it is not going, then you have to see what corrective action you have to take so that it works. So these are the two various things a manager has to do: planning and control. That is the management part of any operation. Planning and control. Planning is route, the loading, the scheduling, all these things. And in control, you take dispatching, follow up or expediting, corrective action. So this is, you see that plan is going, work is going according to your plan. I can hear some voices. I think there's some problem. I can't, slideshow is not moving. What are the factors which affect the PPC? That is production planning and control. Gaurav, you read.
Yes, ma'am. factors affecting PPC. The various factors which affects the production planning and control are listed below. The interdependence of various operations involved in the information process, the nature of product and quantity of product. Thirdly, the nature and availability of various equipments and materials required for manufacturing process. Fourthly, the size of orders and the production run. Fourth, the nature and type of manufacturing system. And last, the nature and type of manufacturing method adopted.
So you can see there is interdependent. There are so many various activities which you do while the operation is going on. So this is not an isolated thing. It is interdependent on each other. Suppose if you are making a cycle, producing a cycle. So naturally for the cycle, the various parts of that cycle has to be produced, then it has to be assembled, then it has to be painted, then it has to be packed. So all these things, it is not one activity is in isolation with the other. They are all affecting each other. So what type of product you are making and what is the quantity, how much you are. If it is a large product, it will require more type of activities, and those have to be done in a systematic way, that the final like suppose if you are making a stool, what do you need? A top, the legs, which have to be assembled. But suppose you are making a cycle, that will be a more complex thing. So what type of the planning will require the various activities, which is in the first case it will be the stool which you are producing, and in the second time it will be the cycle. Similarly, you operation can be for anything. It can be for producing a four-wheeler or a truck or a engine, whatever it is. So as the product becomes complex, the activities, the complexity of the operation also increases. But the basic factor is that you have to see when and how each activity has to be done, so that the final product is delivered in time, in the right quantity and in the right quality, and at right price. So for that you need various type of equipments, various types of material handling equipment. All these things will be affecting your production and planning. Whatever we have studied till now, whatever things are there, the way where the plant has been laid out, what is the type of layout, whether it is a product layout or a process layout or a hybrid layout. So all these things will be affecting your production planning and control. So naturally, if suppose if for your work you require a process layout, so naturally you have your production planning will be affected by that, not by product layout. So you have to see before actually starting the operation. You have to see what type of where should I locate my plant, what type of a layout should be there, what type of material should I get for the producing that desired product, at what quantity, at what price, at what time, and at what is the demand, how much should I do. Accordingly, everything has to be rooted. What type of manufacturing system I'm using, for example, whether I'm using a manual system or a semi-automatic system or a fully automatic system or a computerized automatic system. So all these things will be affecting your production planning and control. And naturally, what type of a method you are adopting. That is why you have right at the beginning, the 5 M's are material, man, machine, method. Method is also what method you are using. Maybe two people are producing the same thing, but if they are using different methods, the result can be vast. There can be lot of deviation or variation in the product. So all these things will be affecting your production planning and control. So what are the phases of production planning? And we have already done this. I'm just loading, sequencing, routing, scheduling, dispatching, expediting, line balancing. What is loading? Loading is concerned with preparation of workloads. Allotting the job to the individual machine is known as machine loading. The purpose of this function is to load the machine according to their capability of performing the given task and according to their capacity. Naturally, suppose that is why you have to know what type of equipment you require, how much work it will do, what type of work it will do. So accordingly, you do the loading. Suppose you have to produce 100 units of some product, but then for producing that unit, 100 unit, you will have to make that product. You have to break down the product into different parts, and each part either can be produced separately in one process, or they can be done in a product layout where a main chassis is produced first and then other components are added to it. So this you have to, it will depend what type of a product layout you are using. So accordingly you will make your plan. When it has to be loaded, which machine will be used, which person will be doing that particular job. All these things have to be very minutely planned. Then sequencing. So once you have sequence planning, is the creation of an optimized assembly sequence. Which task has to be done first, which has to be done second, which have to be done simultaneously. All these things are in the sequencing. Sequence planning is the creation of an optimized assembly sequence that takes into account all of the production and supply restrictions. The production sequence helps to avoid bottleneck situations while maximizing the use of available resources. Bottleneck, what happens? If you put too many things, what will happen? At one pause, your production will be affected and you will be not getting the desired, because they'll be stopping more than the capacity of the operation is being loaded, and naturally that will be affecting the production of that particular object or product. Gaurav, you continue.
Yes, ma'am. Routing process planning. Firstly, routing means determination of path or route on which manufacturing operations will travel. It also establishes the sequence of operations to be followed in manufacturing a particular product. Generally, route path is determined in advance. And secondly, the several activities in routing or process planning includes fixation of path of travel, breaking down of operations to define each operation, deciding the setup time and process time for each operation.
So can you see it?
Yes, ma'am.
So see, naturally, any product which you are producing will require very different operations. So you have to see which has to be which route that product should take. Maybe input is coming this way, it is going circular, or it can be different product has to be go like this. So what will be suited for your product? The fixation of the path of travel, you have to plan it beforehand, how it will move, how things will move to get the desired result, and how many different types of operations are required to make that product. And for each operation, some setup time, process time is required. That also you have to calculate and see how much time should be given to it. Can you see this scheduling?
And the 11th slide is visible. Yeah, now 12th slide.
Now is it visible?
Yeah, the 12th slide is visible now. Can I read?
Yes, read it.
Scheduling. Firstly, determination of the time that should be required to perform the entire series was suited, making allowance for all factors concerned. Secondly, fixing of starting and completing date of each operation.
So then you schedule. Once you have seen, as I have shown in your last thing, it takes a particular route in completing the job. So for that, you have different operation. In that operation also, you might be having different activities. So all these things determine how much time it should for each activity. So you schedule the thing, which has to be done first, which has to be done. So scheduling is another part. Starting and completing of each activity, so that finally you have a rough idea when the product will be finished, how much time will be required, and if it is taking more than that time, some margin can be taken, but at least that margin also should be fixed. It should not go beyond that margin.
Dispatching. Dispatching is a routine of setting productive activities in motion through the release of orders and instructions in accordance with previously planned time and sequence, embodied in route, sheet, and schedule charts. It is here the orders are released.
So once things have been completed, then you have to dispatch it. Maybe dispatching over here concerns both the dispatch within the organization and also outside the organization, final finish. So how it should be done? So this also has to be planned properly, so that things move according to your plan, and it does not take more time than what is planned to and what is given to it. So you can have route sheets, you can have schedule charts, and now the things are moving more towards automation. So once you have programmed it, things will move according to the plan.
Expediting. Expediting is the control tool that keeps a close observation on the progress of the work. It identifies the deviation from the actual production plan, then all deviations are investigated and suitable remedial measures are taken in order to complete the work by the planned date. Secondly, here the activities include identification of bottlenecks, delays, and interruptions, devise action plans, remedies for correcting the errors and following up and monitoring progress of work through all stages of production.
So once you have, when the work is going on, you have to see whether where it is deviating, why it is deviating. Because if suppose a bottleneck means what? Here is a bottle. So this is neck. The actual flow will depend upon how much things are moving through this space. So if such a situation happens, why it has gathered at one place and it is not moving as fast as it was moving previously. So it is compared with a bottle whose neck is narrow and things are not moving. So you have to take corrective action. When the bottleneck has happened, then what corrective action you have to take so that things start moving more with more vigor and you get the desired result. And take actions. That is what identification of bottlenecks, delays, and interruption. Devise action plans, remedies for correcting the errors. Follow up and monitoring progress all through all stages of production. So you have to see these things. Okay, whatever, why it is being hampered, why the movement is being hampered, and it is not moving according to the plans. What are the reasons? What corrective action you have to take that it starts moving according to your plans and things are dispatched when, where, at what time, at what place, at what price, at the right quantity to the desired customer.
Yes, ma'am. Characteristic.
Characteristic.
Firstly, it is the planning and control of manufacturing process in an enterprise. The questions like what is to be manufactured, when it is to be manufactured, how to keep the schedule of production, etc., are decided and acted upon for getting good results. Secondly, all types of inputs like materials, man, machine are efficiently used for maintaining efficiency of the manufacturing process. Thirdly, various factors of production are integrated to use them efficiently and economically. Fourthly, the manufacturing process is organized in such a way that none of the work centers is either overworked or underworked. The division of work is undertaken very carefully so that every available element is properly utilized. The work is regulated from the first stage of procuring raw materials to the stage of finished goods.
So right from the time you are getting the raw material, everywhere, what is to be produced, how much is to be produced, at what cost it has to be produced, at what time it has to be produced. So all these characteristics have to be monitored, has to be planned and then monitored. When you are monitoring it, then only you can control the whole operation.
And benefits. Firstly, high productivity of personnel and machinery as the inputs and the outputs end to end are taken care of. Secondly, idle time is cut to the minimum and more emphasis is allowed on the process flow and its smooth functioning. Thirdly, performance can be monitored and effective feedback can be given to employees or machines can be tended to. And fourth is proper utilization of machinery and the workforce is encouraged and followed. If work among personnel is regulated as to avoid underloading or overloading of work. And sixth is optimum levels of coordination is maintained on the production line through the implementation of production planning and control (PPC). And seventh is cost is effectively controlled and managed with sincere planning and control of wastage on the production line. Seventh is quality achieved is of the highest level and is maintained throughout the workflow.
So if you do your production planning and control in the proper way, so your productivity increases, the maximum use of the input is done, and minimum wastage is there. And you have to look at both the workforce as well as the maintaining the machinery in a proper way, so that because of any breakdown or any error in the machine, your production is not being affected. So proper planning and then monitoring and then controlling, these things will lead to these benefits. Proper coordination will be there among the various entity of the operation. They'll be producing the things in the desired quantity, quality, price at the time, and finally it will lead to greater customer satisfaction. What are the limitations?
Limitations. Firstly, the system is solely based on assumptions. If the assumptions are proved to be right, you have a successful implementation, as your production planning and control is a failure. Secondly, the system can face rigidity from employees through their behavior. Thirdly, production planning and control is difficult for small-scale firms and organizations, as it is extremely time-consuming. Fourth, the initial setup cost is extremely high and won't be affordable to many organizations. It's highly dependent on external factors such as changes and updates in technologies, government rules and regulations.
So these are some of the limitations. You first of all, on what assumptions you have done the planning. Your assumptions should be correct. If your assumptions are not correct, then naturally whatever you have planned will not give you the desired result. And if the employees are not very faithful towards their work, this will result in rigidity, and the system will find its productivity going down. Right at the beginning, when we were doing productivity, and I have said, you have to focus a lot on the benefit, how to keep the workforce motivated and satisfied with their work. They should feel comfortable in the place where they are working. For that, we had also discussed agronomics, the tools and the tools they were using were agronomically designed so that they are comfortable with in their workplace. That is a place where you are spending most of your daytime. So naturally, if you are not comfortable with the working condition of that operation, this will affect the production planning. If it is not planned, it will affect the productivity of that particular product. For small scale, actually for larger scale, it is much more easier. But for a small scale also, you have to do planning. Only thing, it will require more time, and sometimes this it will not give you the economy of scale. But without planning, that the production of that small scale will also be affected, and the initial setup cost is quite high. That is why in a bigger organization, it is cheaper, but in a smaller organization, it can be higher. So you have to work accordingly and see where you can improve upon it, how you can. These are the limitations on which you have to see and work upon. And naturally, as I have already told you, there are certain factors which are controllable, which is under your control. But there are certain factors which is uncontrollable. Like, for example, political technology or the political environment. So how you move, how you have to keep an eye on the external environment or the uncontrollable environment, and accordingly shape your plan in such a way that you get the desired result.
In conclusion, PPC can be summed up into three basic stages. Planning, the choice from several alternatives of the best, utilizing the available resources to achieve the desired objective. In accordance out in production plan. Third, control, the monitoring of performance through a feedback by comparing the plant targets so that performance can be.
So finally, you see, these are the three basic stages which affects your production planning and control. Planning, where you can have more than one choice. You have to see which is the most optimum way to do the thing, and accordingly you make the plans. And then when the actual operation is going on, the performance is whether the performance is going on according to your plans, whether it is giving you the desired result. And then if you don't monitor, naturally you won't be able to control it. So monitoring and controlling, they go together. Suppose I have given a class a test and I don't monitor. So I don't know whether the children are cheating or they are only concentrating on their own work. So how will I check? I have to keep on monitoring that whole operation to see that things are going according to my plan, according to the way I want it to go. Similarly, in any organization, any place, you have to keep on monitoring things to see whether things are, because at the end, if you get the bad result, what will happen? You cannot go back and redo the whole thing. So it is best when you are doing the work, you keep on monitoring it so that you have a full control on the operations and you get the desired result. Are you, this planning and control is clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, who can sum it up for me? Praveen? Are you still driving? Hello? Can any one of you? I think only two of you are present. Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Praveen and Gaurav, only two of you are present.
Yes,
So, yes, Praveen, you sum it up for me.
He lost the connection, ma'am.
As we have said, basically it concerns only three things: planning, operation, and then controlling. Planning is that you plan the whole operation beforehand, and then while the operation is going on, you monitor the whole process and see whether things are moving according to the plan or not. And if it is not, then take the corrective measures there and then only. Otherwise, it will be too late. Because once the thing has gone out of your control, bringing it back to the way you wanted to do it will require extra monetary as well as time. So, and maybe by the time when you require the result, it is not available. So you have to, while doing the work, monitoring is very, very important. You cannot just leave it after planning, and once the operation has started, you just sit back and relax. You cannot do that. These things are very dynamic. You have to keep on monitoring it so that you get the desired result.
Ma'am,
Is it clear?
hello.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, I want to ask you a question, ma'am.
Ask me.
That one term we discussed later, means in the last slide, that the government rules and regulations, that always we have to be familiar with. So, according to this production, ma'am, what types of rules and regulations mainly we have to look after?
See, what government is also a regulator, isn't it? When like the now the emphasis more is more on the role of the government as a regulator. So if suppose it feels कि the number of units being produced should be regulated, should be fixed, and you don't produce more than that. Otherwise, some maybe some sort of a you have to pay some penalty for it. Suppose I'm just giving you an example. Then you have to know what the government desires. You have to be very familiar with the rules and regulations. What type of inspection the government wants? What type of the result the government wants? What are the rules and regulations the government wants for the workforce or the work? Whether the timing. Suppose the government has regulated that for the time the worker works is 8 hours per day. Now you're using that workforce for more than 8 hours. Either you are paying over time or not. So if that is the rules and regulation, and naturally you have to see how well the government is implementing those rules and regulation, because you can always, in the practical sense, you can always, if you have that leeway to get away with the rules and regulation, you'll use that, maybe at the cost of affecting your workers, but you'll do that. So you should,
Yes.
as far as possible, you have to see that you work according to the rules and regulation of the government.
Yes. I'm here in Tata Motors also in Jamshedpur.
Hmm.
As the production is achieved, ma'am,
Hmm.
uh, they are taking block closures.
Hmm.
Politically, after they are when they are achieved their target, ma'am,
Hmm.
like means production of the vehicles, ma'am. As soon as
Hmm.
they are achieved it, they are starting taking block closures. Like in month, I think what is their frequency? I doesn't know, ma'am. But 1 or 2 days, they're taking block closures.
Hmm.
That is also they are. I think they're taking according to the government rules and regulations.
So whatever rules and regulations the government maybe say some changes in the labor law, so that has to be implemented. So you have to be in sync with the rules and regulations of the government. Otherwise, maybe you'll have to pay some penalty or something like that. Your production will be affected. Your material will be, maybe it will be rejected. So all these things you have to see. What is the political stability of the ruling party? All these things affect the production of any unit. So when you're as I told you, there are certain things which are controllable, but the uncontrollable you have to see how you can work properly in that particular environment, whatever is the environment.
That's right.
Now the labor laws have changed a lot. So there is a lot of agitation also is going on, but still the laborers are not very well that satisfied as they were previously. But anyway, it depends upon the political system and the will of the political party, which will affect the uh, uh, units being produced, the quality being produced.
That's right.
In today's situation, what is happening? The number of people seeking jobs are more. So that is why there is always, when there is more than supply than demand. If that much demand is not there in the market, and so it becomes naturally at a lesser price, you can employ them. There's so much of competition. If one person is not working, there's someone else ready to work for it at a lesser price, because non-availability of jobs. So these
That's right.
things will affect your planning.
Yes,
Maybe
ma'am.
you can produce something cheaper because the political situation or the any other geographical situation or anything that will be affecting your decision making, that will be affecting your planning.
Yes, ma'am.
But to be practical, especially in today's environment where there's so much of shortage of proper job opportunities for the youth,
Yes, ma'am.
isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
For see, any situation, for some people it can be bad, and for some it might be good. Maybe for the management is good, they will be getting cheaper labor, or for the workforce it will be bad, because they will not be getting the remuneration which they are looking for. But whatever is the situation, everything is not under your control. Kaki, you can change the situation. If you cannot change the situation, you have to change yourself and work accordingly. The management also has to change itself and work. If the labor laws are so strict that, uh, for example, in Western countries, most of the polluting organizations are being shifted to third world. That is the developing countries. So they don't want to pollute their environment, but they are polluting our environment.
Yes, ma'am.
So they are making use of, and our government is looking for opportunities. They are looking for employment. So they open their gate for them, and they allow them to make these polluting industries in their geographical region. So these are, I mean, globally also it is affecting. I suppose there is a lot of demand in the globally for your product. So naturally, you will be working more so that you will be able to satisfy. There is opportunity. You'll be seeking what are the opportunities in the environment. Accordingly, you'll be working and then producing that much. And maybe for that, your profit or your economic situation also improves. Accordingly, we have to be always alert towards the external environment. What is opportunities we are getting, what threats are there, who are your competitors, everything. So these will affect your planning.
Yes, ma'am. There are various factors, ma'am, like technology.
Various factors, various factors.
We have to be alert about.
These are very dynamic environment.
Yes, ma'am.
So let us now start the second. This is all in your production planning and control. Let us start. Can you say it, aggregate planning or not?
No, ma'am.
Achha,
Slide
okay.
is on.
Now you can say it.
Yes, ma'am. Aggregate planning. Slide is visible.
Hmm. Yes. Gaurav, you read it.
Yes, ma'am. Aggregate planning is a method for analyzing, developing, and maintaining a manufacturing plan with an emphasis on uninterrupted, consistent production. Secondly, aggregate planning is most often focused on targeted sales forecasts, inventory management, and production levels in the mid-term, 3 to 18-month future. Thirdly, aggregate planning defines the necessary production inputs for a good or service, including facilities, workforce, raw materials, and inventory levels to maintain consistent delivery dates, all while keeping costs down.
So aggregate planning is you planning for the whole range of goods which are like any generally the manufacturing units they don't produce. Suppose they are manufacturing say smartphones. So there in that also there can be various types of smartphones and various types of things. So for the whole thing, aggregate means total, aggregate, total how much what will be they require, what raw materials they will require, what type of so for us one period, it is generally for short period from 3 to 18 months. For this, what will be the demand? First of all, you have to analyze what will be the demand. If the demand is for say 100 units to produce the various uh, units of the same product of different categories. So, how much raw material you will be requiring, how much workforce you will be requiring, what process you will be requiring, what input you will be requiring. For that whole total thing, you are doing the aggregate planning. It is not for individual. You are not breaking down into one individual, but for the total.
Gaurav ji, I will read.
Yeah. Continue, Ravindra.
Now
Okay.
continue.
To create an aggregate plan, one must first determine the number of units that are produced over a specific time frame, which is the capacity, and the number of unit needed, which is the customer demand.
So you have to match this thing. Your capacity, how much unit you will be producing during that particular time frame, and what is the customer demand in that particular time frame. So you have to match for that what inputs you require for the total thing. That is the aggregate plan.
It is about translating demand forecast into production and capacity level over a fixed planning horizon. Assumes the demand forecast is fairly accurate. It generally uses an aggregate unit of production.
So here you are matching your demand and supply. Naturally, you have to be very careful when you are analyzing the demand forecast. The method which you will be using for the demand forecast, as far as possible, it should be realistic. It should always forecast a value very near to the actual demand. Maybe in future there will be some deviation because it is a forecast. It is not the actual thing happening. It is you're foreseeing that this will be the demand. And for this aggregate unit, how much of say steel you'll be requiring. Like as one of you are in Tata Motors, na?
That's fine.
Hello.
That's
So
fine.
you must be doing this aggregate planning.
That's fine.
The planning, suppose they want to make n number of cars. In cars also they are making different types of cars. But the raw material is the same raw material, almost same type of raw material is being used in all the cars. There is variations, no doubt about it, but for say 10 type A car, 10 type B car, 10, but the total, how much steel you'll be requiring or how much energy you'll be requiring for the total things. So that is aggregate planning. And for that, what unit you will be using.
Aggregate planning is usually based on an aggregate of production. It is the production are similar. An average item can represent the aggregate unit. If there are variety of product, then the aggregate unit may be weight, ton of steel, volumes, gallon of gasoline, amount of work required, hours of labor, rupee value, value of the inventory in rupees.
Like, say you are producing n numbers of cars. Then for the total, how much steel you will be requiring, how much gasoline you will be requiring, how much labor hour you will be requiring, what will be the uh, value in the rupee. It is not for one car and not one type of car, but the total. Aggregate is also always. Then in the second term, you go to the individual. From aggregate, we again break up into individual when we are doing the planning.
Here are some of the factors to consider when trying to create consistency in one process. Pricing strategy. When demand is low, reduce the price to match capacity. You can also do the reverse. When demand high, increase the price. Advertising, promotion, making marketing and promotion activities can impact the demand of your product and service. Bank ordering, delay delivery unit demand catches up with capacity. New demand creation, create another demand to supplement
Supplemented.
an existing one. Workforce, you can lay off or hire employee to meet the demand or respond to a lack of it. Overtime, subcontracting, or use of a temporary workforce is also an option.
So, see, pricing actually, if demand is high, then you can raise the price of your product. If the demand is low, you can uh, reduce the price of the product so that at least whatever you have, you are able to sell it because there's not much demand. As I told you today, the demand, the opportunities for work is low. So people are getting lower wages because and that also they are getting the work that is the more important than how much they are getting. Then advertising and promotion helps you in selling your product because if you don't let people know what product are there, what are the various features associated, you won't be able to sell those products. Sometimes you have to create demand. Sometimes you have to push your product in the market. Sometimes you see what is the demand in the market and it pull it to yourself and then fulfill that demand. Sometimes you have to create new product, new demand. For example, when these various uh, conflicts came to India, we were not used to those type of breakfast. We were more used to eating a traditional breakfast. But then it was created that is it is more nutritious, it is less time consuming, it is more tastier and things like that. And with the changing pattern also, people got used to it and people started buying this demand. So initially they created this demand in Indian market. The Indian market was more used to the traditional way of producing their breakfast. So sometimes the demand is created. For example, today you look at any of these cookery show, they'll be suggesting olive oil, and comparatively it is quite expensive than other oil. And it is not that they are giving making you, because nature has not given us olive. It is coming from outside India, and naturally it is more expensive. But through this various cookery show, it is being pushed. The demand is being created in the market, and people are going for it. Then workforce also, you can have either you can have a fixed workforce working, or you can change the number of people working according to the demand. If there's more demand, you employ some more people temporarily. If you have less demand, you can lay off some people temporarily, or you can use overtime. As the demand rises, you can use overtime, or you can subcontract somewhere. You can ask someone else to make for you, and you are the seller. So temporary workforce is an option. Like, every time you don't have to have a very steady workforce. It will depend upon the number of units which is being demanded by the market, or which you are able to create in the market. Accordingly, if you're able to create higher demand, then naturally you increase your workforce and sell it. So
Minimize cost, maximize profit, maximize customer service, minimize inventory investment, minimize change in production rates, minimize change in workforce level, maximize utilization of plant and equipment.
So you have to keep these objectives in mind. You have to minimize cost, and these two things go together: minimizing cost and maximizing profit. Then maximizing customer service, especially in today's competitive environment. This is very important. If you are giving a customer better service than your competitor, naturally you will be getting uh, more people attracted toward your product or service. And then, as far as possible, keep the inventory level at the minimum level. That there should not be overproduction, or there should not be underproduction. It in in one case there is actual loss, in another case there is opportunity loss. Suppose you are underproduction, if the demand is more, you are not able to fulfill everyone's demand, then naturally you will be using so many opportunities. And minimize changes in production rates. Production rates, as far as possible, make it steady. So there's not a lot of changes in the production rate. And also the changes in the workforce that boost the morale of the workforce. And whatever equipment and the way you have designed your plant, the maximum utilization of that should be there. It should be designed in such a way that minimum wastage is there and maximum utilization is there. So this is the way how aggregate planning process moves. First, determine demand for each period. So I have said, aggregate planning is for a smaller period. For one fixed period, what is the demand? How much is unit of that product, or what type of service is in demand? Then determine capacities for each period. What is your capacity for that particular period? How much you can produce? Suppose whether the demand is for n products, and your capacity of producing is for n minus 1 product, so naturally you won't be able to satisfy all the demands. Identify policies that are pertinent, that are good. The policy should be such that it caters to the demand of the consumer. And then determine the unit cost for unit produce. how much each unit costs. And you maybe it is better to have more than one plan. You analyze and see which will be the best plan. You can have more than one, and suppose in case one plan fails, you can always rely on the other. Select, otherwise you should analyze and select the best plan which satisfies your needs. So this is the way accurate planning process moves. Determine first the demand, then your capacity for that particular period. It is not a permanent thing. It is talking about a small period. What is the demand for that period? What is your capacity for that period? What are your policies for that period? What is the unit cost? What is, then you have to develop, see all the alternatives which are available, and then analyze each alternative and select the best alternative. Praveen, you read.
Success depend on having the following input: an aggregate demand forecast of for the period you are planning, for evaluating capacity management, including using subcontractors, outsourcing, etc., and the existing operations status as your workforce. All these will lead to generate greater accuracy and therefore a greater likelihood of success. One can achieve this by applying a variety of aggregate planning strategy. There are three main ones that organization have used: level strategy, chase strategy, hybrid strategy.
So you have, as when you are doing the planning, you have to know what is the demand and what is your capacity, that we have already discussed. What is the demand and what is your capacity? And for this, there are three strategies: level strategy, chase strategy, and hybrid strategy. See, these three have different approaches. For it depends upon the person who's taking the decision and also on the situation. According to the situation, you can choose any one of them. Aggregate strategies are level strategy, chase strategy, and hybrid strategy.
The goal of an aggregate planning strategy is to keep the production rate and the workforce level. This requires strong forecasting of demand to know if production level must be increased or decreased as customer demand grow and shrink. This aggregate production planning strategy will keep funds for workforce steady, but can increase your inventory and backlog.
So here you keep your workforce level at one level. Maybe if the demand is high, you can uh, uh, either outsource, or you can go for paying them overtime or something, so that the demand is met. So, but here level strategy, as the name itself says, here it is you are maintaining the same level of workforce and the production rate, but time you are increasing by employing some of them in overtime. But in this method, your inventory and backlog can increase, because suppose the demand is low but you have the same workforce, so you can produce more than what is demanded. If the workforce is and the its demand is more than what you can produce, then there will be backlog. You will have to see how that backlog is. So there is a chances of increasing your inventory and backlog in level strategy. Then second is your chase strategy. Read.
As the name implies, one is chasing market demand. The production matches demand, and excess inventory is not held over. This is part of a larger lean production strategy, which saves money by waiting until an order is placed. However, productivity and quality can be reduced, and it can negatively impact the morale of one's workforce.
Here, according to the demand, you keep the workforce. So what will happen? This will lead to lean production strategy. You are not overproducing or underproducing. You are doing whatever is being asked, you are producing that. But it is the morale of the workforce, because if they are lying idle, so naturally their wages are being affected. So here, but here as it says, chasing, you are chasing the market demand. Whatever is the market demand, accordingly you are putting the input. Maybe it is lean production, but this also has certain limitations and some negativity.
In this strategy, ma'am, actually, if you have the uh, goodwill in your market and have the more order of you, then okay. Otherwise, how to जो मैन पावर है उसको कैसे संभाल के रखेंगे? हाउ टू मेक द
अब कैसे
मैन
करते
पावर?
हैं? करते ही हैं, उनको ले ऑफ कर देते हैं. एक्चुअली छोटे छोटे यूनिट्स में ये चलते हैं.
या तो आपके पास में इतने प्रॉफिट्स हैं कि आप उनको डिमांड के अकॉर्डिंग उनको संभाल के रखिए.
There can be people, maybe places where people are looking for temporary job opportunities. तो जहाँ तब जब डिमांड रहेगा तो आएंगे उन लोग, और दे आर ऑल्सो यूज टू इट कि जब डिमांड नहीं है तो उनको काम नहीं मिलेगा. ये थोड़ी है कि आप उनको संभाल के रखिएगा और पेमेंट करते रहिएगा जब वो काम नहीं कर रहे हैं.
लेकिन मैम अगर हम उसको निकाल देंगे तो वो हमारे लिए तो बैठे नहीं रहेंगे ना.
But there is always a market in जैसे हम लोग कैसे जो वर्कफोर्स काम करते हैं घर वर में मिस्त्री उस्त्री का, तो there is always sometimes there is more demand.
वो घर का ठीक है, इंडस्ट्री के लिए अगर बात
इंडस्ट्री के लिए थोड़ा मुश्किल है, स्पेशली फॉर अ लार्जर ऑर्गेनाइजेशन. छोटे ऑर्गेनाइजेशन में शायद ये काम हो सकता है चेस, but for a larger organization it is difficult. But this is one way of doing it. It is obviously कि आपको ये करना ही है, ये तो आपके ऊपर है ना. यदि आप उसको मेंटेन कर सकते हैं तब तो ठीक है, मगर ऐसा जनरली मेंटेन करना बहुत मुश्किल है. तो या
very difficult, actually.
हाँ, it is very difficult, very difficult. या उनके पास कुछ अल्टरनेटिव है for that time period, if they can be employed somewhere else. ऐसे opportunities हैं वहाँ तो.
हम small scale industries में होता है ना. यहाँ small scale industries में ये possible है, ये होता ही है, करते हैं small scale industries.
Clear नहीं है क्या बोल रहे हो?
मैम ये small scale industries में जहाँ पे
small, that is what I'm saying. For smaller scale industries, this is possible. But for a large scale industry, I don't think this is possible.
Actually, this condition is very critical to all the SME and large industry, because of everyone need the specific level of the any employee. अगर उसको वो जब आपके जॉब के लिए आपने सिखाया, ट्रेनिंग दी है, जो उसको आपने तैयार किया, और वो जब डिमांड नहीं है आप हटा दोगे तो फिर वो जब भी आपकी डिमांड बढ़ेगी तो आपको वो बंदा नहीं मिलने वाला है. तो आपको फिर वो फिर वो उसको ट्रेंड करना पड़ेगा आपको, उतने जॉब के उसके जॉब के अकॉर्डिंग उसको ट्रेंड करना पड़ेगा। तो उस टाइम पे वो बहुत क्रिटिकल होता है। एक तो डिमांड बढ़ी हुई है, ऊपर से आपको एम्प्लॉय को सिखाना
मिल
है।
नहीं रहा है, लोग मिल नहीं रहे हैं। हाँ, स्पेसिफिक उसका स्किल्स होना चाहिए ना, ट्रेनिंग होना चाहिए। ऐसा
मैं
थोड़ी है
वही
कि
कह रहा हूँ ना, ट्रेनिंग्स करनी पड़ेंगी, तो उसको डेवलप करना पड़ेगा मैम।
हम्म,
तो ये दोनों के लिए, छोटी इंडस्ट्री और बड़ी इंडस्ट्री दोनों के लिए प्रॉब्लम है अगर।
large scale
but
industries.
for some generic work।
और ऑलरेडी वी आर फेसिंग दिस प्रॉब्लम मैम।
अच्छा, तो फिर आप लोग क्या करते हैं?
वही ट्रेनिंग करते हैं, ट्रेनिंग करके उसको सिखाते हैं।
हर एक बार फिर ट्रेनिंग करना पड़ता होगा।
हर बार
Whenever
करना
is
पड़ता है,
the
क्योंकि फ्रेशर आएगा उसके लिए जो वो फर्स्ट टाइम इंडस्ट्री में है, या मतलब अदर टाइप ऑफ इंडस्ट्री है हमारी, तो उसको तो हर चीज जीरो से स्टार्ट करना है।
और फिर जब काम हो गया तो फिर यूजलेस हो गया, जब वो आपके पास डिमांड नहीं होगा तो।
हाँ, तो उसको हटाना पड़ता है, फिर वो कहीं और चला जाएगा। तो हर बार ये साइकिल घूमता रहता है।
वही है ना, यू हैव टू डू अ ट्रेड ऑफ। यदि या तो आप उसको रखिए तो
इंडस्ट्री,
उसको फिर।
एक्चुअली ऑटोमोबाइल इंडस्ट्री कभी भी सस्टेन नहीं है। वो इंडस्ट्री
हाँ,
जो है, एक पीक आता है उसका फेस्टिवल सीजन
हाँ,
सीजन
फेस्टिवल्स में।
तो उस टाइम पे ही एक पीक रहता है, तो डिमांड बढ़ती है, तो उस टाइम पे हमको इंक्रीज करनी पड़ती है मैन पावर।
हाँ,
अदर
तो
टाइम्स पे
ऐसा है ना,
हमको
तो
हटाना
आपको
पड़ता है।
वो जो साइकिल है ना, उसके अकॉर्डिंगली थोड़ा पहले से ही प्रिपेयर रही है।
वही करना पड़ता
हाँ,
है मैम, वही करते हैं
हम्म,
पहले से। लेकिन पहले से
हाँ,
भी नहीं कर सकते मैम। अगर पहले से हमने बंदे ले लिए तो हमारी कॉस्टिंग इंक्रीज कर जाती है।
नहीं नहीं, आप एक कांटेक्ट में तो रह सकते हैं।
कोई नहीं
दे
मिलता
विल।
मैम, कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेबर में कुछ नहीं कर सकते। उसको कॉन्ट्रैक्टर को बोलेंगे, वो आपको एक फ्रेशर बंदा लाके सामने खड़ा कर देगा, आप उसको सिखाओ और अपना काम करवाओ। अगर आपने पहले से लिया ट्रेंड करने के लिए, काम नहीं है, पता चला अगले महीने से काम है, लेकिन अगले अगे इसी महीने से ले लिया और उसको ट्रेंड करने लगे, तो आपकी कॉस्ट इंक्रीज करेगी, क्योंकि स्मॉल इंडस्ट्री में कॉस्टिंग भी बहुत ही मिनिमम होती है,
हम्म,
मार्जिन बहुत मिनिमम होते हैं।
हम्म।
तो लेट्स ऑफ चैलेंजिंग इन एमएसएमई।
हाँ, ऐसा है ना, ये चैलेंजेस ही तो डायनेमिक बनाते हैं ये सब फील्ड को। आपको हमेशा अपने आप को, क्या सिचुएशन है उस हिसाब से अपने आप को ढालना पड़ेगा, और क्या मेजर लेना है लेना पड़ेगा, बिकॉज यू कैन नॉट
एक्चुअली
डू दैट।
we are
हाँ,
control the process by staff and our quality persons and production persons.
तो फिर ये किस तरह के वर्क फोर्स को आप लोग लेते हैं उस वक्त जब डिमांड बढ़
कॉन्ट्रैक्ट
जाता
बेसिस
है?
पे।
कंट्रैक्ट
कॉन्ट्रैक्ट
बेसिस
बेसिस।
पर। अच्छा, कंट्रैक्ट बेसिस पर। हाँ, तो जब डिमांड, तो लोग भी यूज टू हो जाते होंगे ना, जानते होंगे कि इस पीरियड में अब डिमांड आएगा तो हम लोग को नौकरी मिलेगी।
एक्चुअली जो अपना स्टाफ है उसको तो फिक्स है वो मैम, उसको तो हम नहीं कर सकते ऐसे कि
हाँ,
अभी काम है तो आपको रखना है, काम नहीं है तो निकाल देना, तो वो तो
हाँ,
एक लाइबिलिटी है कंपनी की, वो तो हम रखने ही रखने, मेंटेन करना ही है। तो उन्हीं
हम्म,
उसी बेसिस पे ही वो मैन पावर को, कंट्रोलिंग क्या है, वो क्वालिटी के पैरामीटर्स हैं, तो वो
हम्म,
इंस्पेक्टर्स होते हैं जो स्टाफ के, वो क्वालिटी में चेकर्स होते हैं, वो
हम्म,
आवरली चेक करते हैं, तो नई मैन
हम्म,
पावर को उस तरीके से उनको टीच करते रहते हैं, ट्रेनिंग देते रहते हैं,
हम्म,
और पार्ट डिफेक्ट को वो कैप्चर करते रहते हैं, तो उस
हम्म,
लेवल पे जाके कहीं कंट्रोल हो पाता है। अदरवाइज हम
हम्म।
100% डिपेंड हो जाए ऑपरेटर या कॉन्ट्रैक्ट लेबर पे, तो डेफिनेटली वी पास द डिफेक्ट टू कस्टमर।
हाँ, ये तो होगा ही। आपको उस समय उस जिस लेवल का आपको चाहिए है नहीं मिला, तो फिर तो मुश्किल हो जाएगा। यू वोंट बी एबल टू सेटिस्फाई द
जी।
कस्टमर। तो यू हैव
यस।
टू सी की व्हाट यू कैन। तो एक है ना हाइब्रिड, इसके बाद।
There is a third alternative, which is a hybrid of the previous two strategies. This keep the balance between the production rate for workforce and the inventory level, while still responding to demand as it changes. This alternative offers a bit of flexibility that can satisfy demand, which working to keep production cost low.
तो यानी कुछ लोगों को आप परमानेंट रख सकते हैं, कुछ लोगों को आप ये कॉन्ट्रैक्ट बेसिस पर रख सकते हैं। किस तरह के लोग को
हाँ
आप
वही मैंने
परमानेंट
बताया मैम कि वही हम करते हैं कि स्टाफ जो है अपना परमानेंट
हाँ
है और उसको जो कॉन्टेक्ट लेवल है उसको हम इन और आउट करते हैं।
हाँ इन आउट करते रहते हैं। तो जैसा सिचुएशन है तो आपको उसे अकॉर्डिंगली यू हैव टू वर्क अप, क्योंकि एज आई टोल्ड यू एवरीथिंग इज नॉट कंट्रोलेबल। तो जो कंट्रोलेबल नहीं है तो यू हैव टू बी फ्लेक्सिबल इनफ टू फिट इनटू दैट। तो दोनों के अपने एडवांटेजेस एंड डिसएडवांटेजेस हैं। यहाँ वर्कर्स का स्टेबल आउटपुट एंड वर्कफोर्स, यहाँ इन्वेंट्री में लो है, यहाँ इन्वेंट्री जो इसमें प्लस पॉइंट्स है तो इसके नेगेटिव पॉइंट्स हैं एंड थिंग्स लाइक दैट। एडवांटेजेस है लेवल में स्टेबल आउटपुट एंड वर्कफोर्स, advantages in Chase is investment in inventory is low, labor utilization is high. Disadvantages in level is greater inventory cost, increased overtime and idle time, resource utilization vary over time. Disadvantages हैं the cost of fluctuating workforce, potential damage to employees morale, ताकि आप कंट्रैक्ट बेसिस पर रख रहे हैं तो जब नहीं है काम तो जो कंट्रैक्ट बेसिस है थोड़ा तो उसका मोरल डाउन होता ही है।
Actually, always OEMs only maintain and work to lean manufacturing.
हाँ
Other tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers not maintain the and work on lean manufacturing because of the OEMs are very frequently change the planning. तो हमको 3 से 4 दिन की इन्वेंट्री एनी टाइम मेंटेन करके रखनी पड़ती है।
रखनी पड़ती। अब जैसा
वो कब
सिचुएशन है तो करनी ही
इंक्रीज कर
पड़ेगी ना।
देगा। हाँ मैं वही कह रहा हूँ कि ओईएम्स जो हम जैसे कार मैन्युफैक्चरर बाइक मैन्युफैक्चरर हैं जो ब्रांड हैं एक्चुअली जैसे हीरो बजाज या मारुति टोयोटा, ये लीन पे काम करते हैं। ये अपने सप्लायर से उतना ही मटेरियल उठाएंगे जितनी जरूरत है या जितना प्रोडक्शन होना है। बट सेकंड जो सप्लायर हैं टियर 1 टियर 2, उनको नहीं पता कि कल क्या मांगने वाले हैं। उनको तो रखना ही रखना है 3 दिन की इन्वेंट्री।
भाई कुछ बचा रह जाए तो कोई बात नहीं, कोई अपॉर्चुनिटी लॉस ना हो।
हाँ क्योंकि वो लाइन लॉस जो है
फिर मार्केट में
हैवी पेनल्टी,
हाँ हैवी पेनल्टी, और फिर एक मार्केट में नेगेटिव मैसेज भी तो जाता है।
जी जी।
तो यहाँ तो these are the various ways you can do it। अब आप पर है when you are actually working जो है तो क्या आप यूज करेंगे, जैसा सिचुएशन रहेगा जैसा अपॉर्चुनिटी रहेगा वही करना होगा।
Actually, all the things, all the material of in books and education material based on the OEMs.
हाँ हाँ जो ये तो है कि you have to flexibility तो रखना ही पड़ता है। So there are various techniques which are used in your aggregate planning. One is your linear programming model, second is your linear decision rule, and third is your simulation. जैसे linear programming हम बता रहे हैं,
LP models are methods
क्या करते ना,
sorry ma'am,
हाँ you read it, I'll explain it to you.
LP model are method of obtaining optimal solution to problem involving the allocation of scarce resources in term of cost minimization or profit maximization. The goal is to minimize the sum of costs related to regular labor time Over time, inventory holding cost and cost associated with the chasing size of the workforce. Constraints involve the capacity of the workforce, inventories, and subcontract.
So here we use a mathematical technique which is known as linear programming. Linear है इसलिए क्योंकि यहाँ जो relationship है ना वो linear है, जैसे quadratic नहीं है कुछ. That's what I said. जैसे ये इक्वेशन है ना, y is equal to ax, तो ये लीनियर है. यहाँ x square लिख, it will be quadratic. So what we do is we have an objective function which is denoted by z. Sorry, this function either has to be maximized or minimized. If it is with profit, related to profit, then it is maximized. If it is related with cost, it has to be minimized. Now what we do is we take z is equal to, say suppose we are producing n number of items using the same resources. That should be your basic assumption. Suppose I am using furnitures, say tables and chairs. I am taking only two things. Table. So for each table, I am getting a profit of C1. Say it is table. And for each chair, a profit of C2. So my total profit is what? Suppose I'm producing X number of tables and Y number of chairs. So my profit will be number of tables into profit of one table plus number of chairs into profit of one chair. So, but this is done under certain constraint. There is a constraint in each resource because these are tables and chairs, so they are using the same resources. They are both are using wood, both are using carpenters, their skill, carpenter's skill, both are using some electricity, whatever it is. So we take this and we try to maximize this. There are different ways of doing it. One is your graphical method, which is only for two dimensional. When you producing only two things. But suppose you're producing more than two things, you cannot do it graphically. Graphically, you cannot draw more than two. So you have to use a simplex method, which is a very tedious, but now you have got programs to find out the answers. So you suppose you take the suppose to produce one table you use A1 unit of wood. To produce one chair, you use, actually, to make it one, 2 unit of wood chair. But there is a limit to the amount of wood you have. There is a constraint on that. Suppose you have 100 cubic feet of wood. Similarly, to produce one table, you use A2 unit of manpower. And to produce one chair, you use A22 unit of man-hour. And there is a constraint on the amount of man-hour available. Say that is something 80 or something hour. So under these constraints, you have to find out the value of how many chairs and how many tables you are going to produce that your profit is maximum. Similarly, you can have the same thing where the cost of one table is so much and the cost of one chair is so much. But there is again the constraint is that you cannot use more than that. Here it is less than equal to where there it is more than equal to that. So in this case, you have to find out the value of Z so the cost is minimum. So using this operations research methodology, you can find out the optimum number of chairs and tables you will be producing under certain constraint to produce the maximum profit or the minimum cost. Either you can maximize this.
Yes.
Cost of one table is C1 and cost of one chair is C2. Such that
Feelings,
amount of, suppose you are taking two constants only. I'm making it the most simple one. A11 amount of wood and for chair, this is table, sorry. And there is a constraint on that. So suppose this is wood. There's some constraint on this. Then for say man hour, two one, then there's some constraint on this man hour also. And all these things, chair and table, should be more than or equal to 0. Either you are not producing anything or you are producing something in positive. Like you cannot produce negative chair or negative table. So this is another, that T and chair should be less than, should be more than equal to 0. So what you do is, these are two straight lines, these two. You draw this, you draw these straight lines. Suppose this straight lines comes like this. So this
Ma'am,
area,
actually, where you are working? We are not seen here.
not seen here, I did not
Actually,
get it.
the presentation is visual, linear programming page.
But this, what I'm drawing is not visible.
Now on screen, linear programming pages.
I'm just telling you how this linear programming is done. Now is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
The one
Yes,
I
yes.
have drawn in red.
Yeah, now it is visible.
Hmm?
Yeah.
Is it visible?
Yes, yes.
Visible, ma'am.
So linear programming, what you do is you maximize the profit or minimize the cost by using this method. The maximum, like suppose you are making n number of products, it has to be finite. It is not for infinite number of products. A finite number of products using the same resources. All of these products are using the same resources. These are the basic assumptions. And the relationship is linear. There's no quadratic in it. Do you get my point? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
So in that case, how many numbers of chairs and under this constraint, there is a upper limit to the amount of wood you have and the upper limit to the amount of manpower you have. So under these constraints, how many chairs and how many tables you will be producing that you can get maximum profit. So you accordingly you can plan for your future, because that is your it is not that the resources are unlimited. Under the limited resources, you have to plan in such a way that you get the maximum profit. And similarly, if when the price of one chair and one this is price the cost of one chair and one table is given to you, then what is the upper limit you say, and then you find out what is the, and these two things are dual to each other. If you are minimizing the cost, profit will automatically get maximized, and if you are maximizing the profit, cost will automatically get minimized. So you solve it mathematically, and you can find out how many numbers of units you'll be producing. This is one method of finding the amount of objects you'll be producing. This is linear programming. I'll do it in more detail in any other class, because this is a one example in itself. Then there's another, here you use calculus. Calculus, all of you must be familiar with it, dy by dx. Where you use the relationship is not linear, where the relationship is quadratic. When you use second order, that where the relation is something like this. Then you use this decision rules to find out the amount of products which you will be producing. Then the third method is simulation, where you are not actually doing it, but you use a program to generate random numbers and find out the probability of happening that. And you make a run. Actually, you are trying to make a model of the actual situation. And from whatever result you get in your simulation, you use that to produce the number of units. So you can use aggregate planning both in your products as well as services. Like services, like suppose what is the basic difference between services and product is that services are intangible. Like for example, you cannot reuse it. For example, take an airline. So you have to study the real situation. Suppose one seat goes vacant. So you cannot use that seat next day. But for product, suppose somebody does not buy a product, you can use that product the second day and sell it to someone else. But you cannot do that with services. As I gave you an example of an airline. So in that case, what is the probability? Like you have to do an actual study of the real situation and see what is the probability of having 0 empty seats, 2 empty, 1 empty seat, 2 empty seats, and then you make a prediction using probability and see in next what will be your optimal number of vacant seats, and then you make the planning accordingly. So you can use this, the method of aggregate planning, both for products as well as services. In summary, I can say, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes,
So,
ma'am.
just read the summary.
Aggregate planning establishes generate level of employment, output, and of to dwell in the planning for what decisions belong planning the very specific and detailed short plans to create service and overall cost of the money program and the
So we can say aggregate planning is a level of employment output for a shorter period, one horizon, one at a time you doing it. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can see aggregate planning is a, for a short period of time, the planning which you do, how much raw material you want to purchase for producing particular number of units of either products or services. So this is the main, here it is between the long range planning and the very short range or operational planning. You can say it is in the tactical level which it comes. This planning comes in the tactical level for some horizon, how much units of a product or service which you are going to uh, plan for. These three methods are offshoots from operations research, which were actually developed during Second World War. Because at that time, the Allied forces had less resources than their opponents, but still they won the war because they used these resources more judiciously, and they won the war. So after the war, these techniques are being used by your different organizations to produce the optimum level of products as well as services. In next class, I'll do the operations research methodology so that it will become, because see, you these things require computerization, because these methods are very tedious methods. Up till two variables, you can use graphical method. But for 3, you have to use simplex method, and it is a very time-taking process. So if you, but the algorithm is easy. Once the algorithm has been developed, it can be, programming has been done. You just have to put the input and you'll get the result. So we'll do that in detail in next class. Okay. Do you have any other questions?
No, ma'am.
So it is not that it is a bookish thing, it is being done practically also. It has been done during Second World War. All these techniques were used during Second World War. It was developed by mathematicians, economists, psychologists, sociologists. Everyone came together and developed these various types of mathematical models to optimize your product, to optimize the product and services and minimize the cost. So if the scientific methods are used, so this will give you a good result with, and this is always has always taken constraints under consideration. मैंने आप अपने जिंदगी में भी देख सकते हैं कि मान लीजिए 2 बच्चे हैं, दोनों इक्वल इंटेलिजेंस के हैं, पर उनके रिजल्ट अलग अलग हो जाते हैं. क्यों होते हैं? क्योंकि दोनों अलग अलग कॉन्स्टेंट्स में काम कर रहे होते हैं. हो सकता है एक के घर में कुछ इतने घर में प्रॉब्लम्स हैं, उससे डिस्टर्ब होता होगा, उसका काम समय पढ़ाई पर नहीं दे सकता है, तो उसका रिजल्ट उतना अच्छा नहीं हो रहा है. इट इज नॉट दैट इट इज अ theoretical problem, it is we are facing this problem every day. तो आपके कॉन्स्टेंट्स क्या हैं, इस पर डिपेंड करेगा कि आपका रिजल्ट क्या होगा. आज उस कॉन्स्टेंट्स को आप चेंज कर देंगे तो रिजल्ट भी चेंज रहेगा. तो कॉन्स्टेंट्स को दिमाग में रखना बहुत जरूरी है. क्या रिजल्ट आ रहा है ये डिपेंड करता है कि आपके कॉन्स्टेंट्स क्या हैं. और ये प्रॉब्लम्स ऐसे हैं कि कहीं कहीं सोल्यूशन नहीं भी हो सकता है. जरूरी नहीं कि एवरी प्रॉब्लम विल हैव अ सोल्यूशन. हो सकता है कुछ लोग जिंदगी में ऐसे फंसे रहते हैं कि सोल्यूशन नहीं मिलता है. तो मैथमेटिकली ऑल्सो इट हैज बीन प्रूव्ड कि एवरी डज नॉट मीन कि एवरी प्रॉब्लम हैज अ सोल्यूशन. There might not, the solution might not exist. With all your efforts and everything, you might not get the solution because that does not, that space where the feasibility reason उसको कहते हैं, feasibility reason कहते हैं. यदि feasibility reason नहीं है तो फिर कोई solution नहीं है. ठीक है, तो आज के लिए इतना ही रहने दीजिए. इसको फिर हमें और डिटेल में नेक्स्ट क्लास में बताऊंगी.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, good night.
Okay, ma'am. Good night.
Good night.